Every year on my birthday, I have to die. I died for the first time on the 18th of August, 2006. It wasn't a particularly pleasant death, nor was it one that I expected. It was simply the random act of violence that destroyed my life, and it came out of nowhere. We were just relaxing at the pub, enjoying a few drinks after a busy day at work. It was my turn to buy a round of drinks, so I was trying to get the attention of the bartender. I felt someone punch me in the side. At first, I thought someone had just hit me, but then I felt the warmth and the rapid stream of blood pouring down my shirt. I realized then and there that I'd actually gotten stabbed. As far as I can remember, it wasn't even that painful. Still, my legs gave out under me, and I collapsed to the floor. Even then I worried more about ruining my expensive suit, ignoring the fact that I might be dying. Oncoming death is funny like that. Everyone thinks they're the exception, that they'll get out from whatever horrible situation the universe has thrust upon them. All there was were people on a journey to different destinations. Whether they had all died like myself, or if they weren't born yet, I didn't know. All I knew was that I wasn't afraid anymore. The worries, the anxiety, and all my fears had been left behind. A light appeared in the distance, endlessly far away. I knew that would be my final destination, my final purpose in the brief life I'd led. Unfortunately, I never managed to get that far. I was jolted awake in my own bed, soaking wet from sweat and shaking like a maniac. My hand reflectively clutched my side to cover up the one I'd sustained, but it wasn't there anymore. In fact, I didn't have a single scratch on me. Had it all been a dream? My phone lit up on the bedside table. I picked it up to find dozens of text messages and missed calls. "Hey man, we're at the pub. You coming or what?" The first message read, sent at 9:43 p.m. "Hey, Rick, where the hell are you?" The second message read, sent at 10:23 p.m. Then there were a couple of phone calls and another message. "I guess you fell asleep, or maybe you're getting lucky, whatever. I'll drink another shot in your honor. Happy birthday, Rick." Then I had over 20 phone calls and a singular message that sent shivers down my spine. "For fuck's sake, pick up the damn phone. Something happened to Danny." I immediately called back. My fingers were trembling both from anticipation and from the memory of what had happened only a night ago. Even if my death had been little more than a nightmare, I knew for sure that I'd met up with my friends at the pub. The phone rang 3 times, then Jake picked up. "Rick, is that you? Where the hell are you?" Jake asked with a panicked, tired voice. "I don't know what happened. I guess I fell asleep," I half-asked, half-stated. "Danny got stabbed last night," Jake said without listening to my explanation. "Stabbed? How?" I didn't know. Some nut job just walked up to him and stabbed him in the side. I almost dropped my phone in shock. Danny had been attacked just like myself, in exactly the same place. 1,000 thoughts rushed through my mind, but worry quickly became my main concern. Is Hell right? He's still in surgery. They're only letting his wife know about. Wait, here she comes. Jake put his phone down, but I could still hear the muffled sound of their discussion. Danny's wife seemed upset, but I couldn't make out the words. "Jake," I asked, he's dead. Danny's dead." The next few moments turned into a blurry haze of information. We'd all known Danny since we were kids, and now he was just gone. The murderer never even made it out from the pub. Apparently he got shot by one of the patrons as he tried to attack another guest. Still, I just couldn't shake the feeling that I was supposed to die that night. By the time day had given way to night, I had almost finished the bottle. Even as a rather large guy, the alcohol had hit me hard. At around 9 o'clock, I just passed out in bed, awaiting a horrible hangover in the morning. I only awoke around midnight when I heard the front door forcefully break open, followed by footsteps and whispers. I tried to get up, still drowsy from the alcohol. As I took one step out from my bed, I slipped and came tumbling down onto the floor. It produced a massive crash, loud enough to alert whichever intruders had broken in. "I thought you said no one would be home," a man stated angrily. "Don't worry about it. I'll go deal with them." The footsteps moved quickly in my direction. I tried to lock the door, but they were too fast, kicking it open and knocking me back to the ground. A masked man entered my room, holding on to a gun. He only spoke a single sentence to me before pointing the weapon at me and pulling the trigger. "You should have stayed quiet." Unfortunately, the man was a horrible shot. He'd aimed at my head, but had hit me in my throat instead. There I lay, drowning in my own blood as I desperately gasped for air. I couldn't crawl away, and I couldn't call for help. I died on my bedroom floor on my own birthday, just as I had a year earlier. Once the life finally drained from my body and the god-awful pain ceased, I was back in the world beyond. I walked through the same colorful dimension that lay just on the edge of life. I admired the shapes and colors as they passed. My phone buzzed, and I was filled with unfathomable dread. I still couldn't quite believe it, but I started to understand that someone would take my place in death. "Hello, Rick. It's Dad. Your mother. She passed away last night." A lump formed in my throat. I knew what was coming next, but I had to ask, how? What happened? The police say it was a burglary gone wrong. I don't know. I was working late. I should have been there. The discussion trailed off from there. My dad was distraught and could barely form coherent sentences. He blamed himself for not being there, but I knew the truth. It was my fault. "If only I'd been there. It wasn't your fault. Dad, had you been there, you might be gone too. You don't know that, but I did know, because the burglars weren't ever supposed to visit my parents' house. They were supposed to kill me. I had to come clean. I had to let him know the truth. But how could he? Half a year passed, and the secret ate at me. I started by telling him about my first death, down to the smallest detail. Of course, it matched everything that people had witnessed in the pub that night, even the location of the stab wound. I told him Danny had taken my place in death, and that I felt guilty. Naturally, he was skeptical at first. But then I told him about my mother. I didn't spare him any details. I told him where I'd gotten shot, that the door had been broken down, and that there were 2 robbers. Every detail matched perfectly down to the letter. "I'm so sorry, Dad. It was my fault. I killed her." He just sat there in silence, processing what I'd just told him. "It wasn't your fault." I was confused. There wasn't a single ounce of anger in his words, only overwhelming empathy. "How can you say that? She didn't have to die." He mulled over his next words carefully before speaking. "You didn't do anything wrong, Rick. You just went about your life, and these things happened to you. I don't know why you've been brought back, or even how, but you're not to blame for what is done to you. So you believe me?" I asked. He nodded and embraced me in a hug. Suddenly I wasn't alone in the world anymore someone knew what was happening to me. What if it happens again? Then we'll get through it together. He stood by these words, even as my next birthday rolled around. That death was more tame. I just slipped in the shower and broke my neck. The last, though, that went through my mind as I left the world for a third time was, how fucking click. Once again, I awoke in my bed. I called out for my dad, making sure he was still alive, horrified that he might have taken my place. I couldn't even breathe until he came rushing to my side, asking what had happened. I broke my neck, but I'm fine, I think. It took a while before I figured out who had taken my place that time, but once I heard that my boss had died, something broke inside me. He was the kindest man I'd ever met, and just like myself, he'd slipped and broken his neck. That was the final straw. It wasn't some bizarre coincidence I could brush off, nor a premonition. First, I left behind a long letter to my father explaining why I had chosen to leave. I couldn't face him in person. I knew he'd just tried to talk me out of it, but it was something I had to do. I couldn't allow any more people to die on my behalf. Alas, fate is a fickle bitch. No matter how hard I tried, I just couldn't end my own life. I tried hanging, but the rope broke. Then I tried to shoot myself, but the gun jammed. When that failed, I tried to drive my car into a tree, but I somehow survived that as well. Any attempt was met with failure. All I could do was to wait for my next birthday and let someone die in my place. No matter how many times I tired, I couldn't die. I was a slave to destiny, and it was destroying me. In 2009, I was hit by a drunk driver, and my girlfriend took my place. In 2010, I drowned, and my kind neighbor had to go through that death in 2011. I died from a brain aneurysm, which ended up killing my aunt. According to each and every laboratory value, I was fine. Yeah, I kept getting sicker. My father and I both knew my time was near, but we also knew I'd be forcefully brought back. Then, at midnight on my birthday, my heart just gave out. I was jolted awake in my own bed, and the sickness was little more than a distant memory. Dad, I called out. No response. I got out of bed and called his name again. I was met with silence. I didn't have to call out a third time. I already knew what had happened. I carefully walked into his room, horrified at what I knew would come. He was dead, just gone from a heart attack. He'd taken my place, and I could do nothing to save him. The funeral came and went in a blur. The only noticeable thing was the missing seats from the people who had passed before him. Some of them had lived their own lives and died as nature intended, but a number of them were supposed to live on. Instead, they'd just taken my place in death. I inherited a number of things from my father. Among them, I found a letter addressed to me. It looked rather worn, so I could tell he'd written it a long time ago. Dear Richard, today's your birthday, and it has officially been a year since your mother passed. While I miss her greatly, I'm thankful to still have you around. I know that if she was given the choice, she would want you to live. I feel the same way. We both know that I might one day take your place in death. Never doubt that I would happily give my life if it means that you may live. You didn't choose this curse, so never blame yourself. Just do what every person is supposed to. Appreciate the people around you, because you never know which day might be their last. I love you, Dad. Since I read that letter, I've been looking for a way out. My father might want me to stay behind, but how can I live on, knowing that I'm taking someone's place? I've long since left town, living by myself in a cabin somewhere away from people. Hopefully, if I have no one left that cares for me, people will stop dying, at least until I can figure out not only how to die, but how to actually stay dead. I'm sorry. Story 2. My boyfriend never gets me anything for my birthday. Gifts have never been my boyfriend's strong suit. We've been together for 4 years now, and each time my birthday rolls around, I have to spend copious amounts of time hinting at items I would like to have. Last year, for example, I kept showing him pictures of a particular necklace and even sent him an email link twice, yet, despite my best efforts, he never caught on. So what does he get me then, you might ask? Well, nothing. I have never received a gift from my boyfriend. Not for my birthday, not for Christmas, and not even for our anniversary. My friends have asked me why I am still with them, and the truth is, I feel like breaking up over a gift or lack thereof would be a rather petty thing to do. I mean, is it really that important for an otherwise healthy relationship? Some might say it is. I do feel disappointed, of course, but I've grown used to it. I already know that for my next birthday and the birthday after that, my boyfriend will pat me on the back, wish me a good day at work, and go back to watching TV. I must have been particularly shocked when he didn't get me anything during our first year together, so I asked him about it. I thought that maybe he'd forgotten, but I couldn't understand how, considering I kept reminding him about it throughout the month. Well, you know what he said. Hey, WW, I'm sorry, pumpkin, aren't I enough? And that pretty much sums it up. Every year, it's always the same. It's not like I expect him to buy me expensive perfumes or a car, but a cake or a bar of chocolate would be nice. Perhaps I'm overreacting. 4 years is no small feat, after all, and what's a single day in the grand scheme of things? However, I am becoming increasingly tense and irritable in the days leading up to my birthday. My boyfriend noticed this year when he discovered me crying in the bathroom. What's wrong, Katie? He asked, pulling me into a hug. I sobbed, not knowing how to bring the subject up again. At this stage, what was even the point? It wasn't like things were going to change. I need a new coat, I sniveled. There's this one I really want. He stared at me, wide-eyed, as I showed him a picture of it on my phone. Well, why are you crying? Go out and get it. See, this is exactly the issue. My boyfriend doesn't believe in gifts. I can't, Michael, I sobbed. Why not? He looked astounded. Don't you have money? How could he be so clueless? Overcome with a sudden pang of anger, I blurted out something I immediately regretted. Either you get me a birthday gift this year. I took a deep breath, or we're over. He looked shell-shocked. To be fair, I was too. I'm sorry, I began, but he scrambled to his feet and left the room. For the next couple of days, we barely spoke to one another. He stayed in the living room, and I mostly kept to myself in the bedroom. I tried apologizing several times, but he only grumbled under his breath, something about me only wanting him for his money. We both knew that wasn't true, though. He wasn't even working at the time, so I was the one giving him an allowance. I had to go to work on my birthday. Most people would shudder at the thought, but I didn't mind it at all. See, it was the one place I knew I'd be appreciated and acknowledged with at least a small gift. My colleagues went all out this year, getting me a large cake and a gift card from my favorite boutique. I would have been ecstatic if it hadn't been for the nagging thought of returning home to nothing. However, when I let myself in through the front door that evening, I was immediately met with a vase of red roses surrounded by glowing candles. A note sat on top of the flower bouquet. You've discovered your first clue. You decide on what to do. Take the plunge, the price was steep. Check the place on which you sleep. I stared at it, dumbfounded. Had he actually bought me a gift? I dashed into the bedroom, looking around wildly for the next piece of paper. I found it sitting on top of my pillow. You have found the second hint. Have you read the finer print? You will get there. Keep the faith. Check the place in which you bathe. What the finer print? I giggled at the questionable rhyming. Still, this was a great improvement from the previous years. I didn't have to search long when I entered the bathroom. The note was in plain sight, stuck to the surface of the mirror. You have found the final clue. Please leave us a good review. We've been paid a fine deposit. Go ahead and check your closet. Wait, had he hired a company to do this? I yanked the closet doors open. Inside hung the most beautiful rose-colored coat I'd ever seen. I grabbed it, pulling it off its hanger in excitement, and throwing it on. It was perfect. The shade complemented my complexion, and the suede material felt soft on my skin. Michael, I called out, expecting him to emerge from the kitchen. I found it, but aside from the soft crackle of the candles, the apartment was silent. I picked my phone up from the floor where ID left it and turned it on. One new notification. I jabbed at the screen, willing it to open the message faster. It was from Michael. Your order 63,820 has been completed. The details are below for reference. 8 times red roses classic 30 USD. 6 times scented candles vanilla 22 USD. 3 times custom scavenger hunt clues birthday 50 United States dollars. 1 times pink suede coat Michael 0 USD. Please check coat pocket for complimentary gift. I gaped at it. My lovely new coat had been free. And what is this about a complimentary gift? A new wave of excitement washed over me. Was there something else? Had he bought me the watch ID asked for on my last birthday? I stuck my hand into the left pocket of my coat. There was something inside. It was circular and squishy. At once I retracted my hand and snapped the overhead lights on to get a better look. Whatever it was, it hadn't left any residue on my fingers. I swallowed and pried the pocket open at the sides to try and see inside. I wish I hadn't. At first, I didn't even understand what it was. It was so red and bloody I couldn't even see it properly. I took the coat off and dumped it onto the floor, shaking the pocket upside down. The contents rolled out, nestling into a crease in the suede. I nearly retched at the sight. There was no mistaking it. They were eyeballs. I screamed. Then I retched. Then my phone pinged. I grabbed at it, my heart pounding in my chest. Another text message from Michael. Thank you for shopping with us. Doubly what? What was he playing at? With shaking hands, I pressed the call button and held my phone up to my ear, ready to give my boyfriend a piece of my mind. Hello, a young woman's voice chimed on the other end. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. Where's Michael? I blurted out. Was he cheating on me on my birthday? There was silence on the other end. Could you let me know your order number? The woman's tone was sickly sweet. It took me a moment to understand. what she wanted. I had no idea whether the whole ordeal was some elaborate prank I wasn't in on, but I certainly wasn't going to stoop down to their level. Pass the phone to Michael. Right now, I growled. Madam, am afraid I can't do that. Please let me know your order number, and I will see how I can help. There was no way around it. 6-3-8-20, I read aloud. I heard her clacking at her keyboard. Right? She said after a pause. I can confirm that your new coat is indeed 100% Michael. Is there anything else I can help you with? What? I cry. What are you talking about? Where's Michelle? She cleared her throat. Mom, Michael came into our shop this morning looking for a very particular coat. He showed us a picture, but we told him we didn't carry it, and that it had to be custom-made. When we gave him a price estimate, he told us he'd get the material himself. That's all I can tell you. As she spoke, my heart traveled from my chest into my throat. Well, where did he get the material? She sighed. Am not at liberty to say, but everything was done at his request. Is there anything else I can help you? I ended the call and dropped my phone onto my new coat, staring at the mess on the floor. My eyes were brimming with tears. I couldn't understand what had happened. Was I supposed to call the police? My phone pinged. I picked it up and stared at the screen. It was from Michael. Had sent a video. Story 3. Hi everyone. My name is Ava, and yesterday was my 8th birthday. Hi everyone, my name is Ava Wayne, and today I am 8 years old. I was 8 yesterday for the first time, but now I am even older. I got to use my mom's computer today, but don't tell her. Last night, when my dad came home from work, he brought me a big chocolate cake with vanilla frosting that had my name on it, and I got to blow out the candles. I didn't even have to eat dinner first. It was the best day, even though I didn't have a party. It doesn't matter, though, because I've never had a party before. My mom and dad say that I'm not allowed because we can't have any other people in the house. They lie and tell me that it's because we lived far away, but I know that it is because of my friend Evie, who lives with us. Evie looks exactly like me, and we are like sisters. She is not really my sister, though. We just say that. Evie can do this really cool trick where she can move my arms and say things in my voice. Sometimes it is a little bit annoying, but she's my friend, so it's okay. My mom and dad don't like Evie, though, and this makes her very mad. My mom says that Evie needs help, and we have to see someone for her. I don't know what she means, but Evie says that my mom is a liar, and I don't like telling Evie that she is wrong. My dad gets really mad and yells at Evie to stop and to shut up and leave me alone, but that just makes her more mad. I've tried to tell him to stop, but he doesn't listen. Yesterday, when my dad brought home the cake, he asked me if I liked it, and I told him yes, and that Evie liked it too. He got really mad, but my mom told him that it was not the time, and he didn't say anything about her. When they lit the candles and told me to make a wish, I didn't know what to wish for. I kind of wanted some new paints so that I could make more paintings for my room, but I also wanted a puppy or some new toys. Mostly I wanted to wish for Evie to stay, but Evie thought that was a stupid wish, because she says she's always going to be with me forever, so I didn't wish for that. I asked Evie what else I should wish for, and my dad got really mad. and told me to just make a wish already because this was none of Evie's business. That made me a little bit sad because it was Evie's business and she was with us, and that was rude of him to yell at her like that. My mom said it was okay, but Dad said that it was not normal. Evie was also getting mad because Dad said she wasn't normal. Everyone was just mad, and I almost cried. But then Evie told me to just make my wish because she would make any of my wishes come true. I thought about it really hard, but then Mom told me to hurry up or else the cake was going to get ruined, so I finally decided to wish for my parents to leave Evie alone and be nice to her. Then I blew out the candles, and my mom clapped, but I could tell that my dad was still mad. We ate cake anyway, but I did ask if Evie could have some because it was finally a good time. We finished the entire cake all by ourselves, and I was even allowed to have the whole pieces. It was awesome. Last night I had a really scary nightmare that I stabbed my mom and my dad in their bed when they were asleep. It was really scary, and I woke up and cried, but I don't think they heard me because no one came to check on me. Only Evie was there, and she said it was okay. When it was morning, I got up, but my mom didn't make any breakfast, and she didn't answer when I was yelling for her. Evie says that they are still asleep, and that I shouldn't go up to their room, so I didn't. Evie helped me to make breakfast. She showed me how to make a burrito with eggs and some chicken that she bought. It was really messy because Evie said that it was fresh meat that had just been killed. I already know that they kill animals for food because my grandpa has a farm, and I had seen them make a turkey before, so I knew that it was very messy. After I ate, Evie said that we could watch TV. She said that I didn't even have to clean up because Mom and Dad weren't going to even see it. She told me that she made my wish come true, and that they weren't going to be mad at us anymore, and they weren't going to yell at us either. Evie says that now we can do whatever we want. I had ice cream, and I watched cartoons all morning instead of going to school, and when the phone rang and the school called, TV talked to them, and she sounded just like my mom. She told them that I was sick, and the lady believed her. It was so fun, and I didn't even know that she could do that. Evie let me use my mom's laptop because she says she knows the password. She told me I could write on here like a diary and post it so other people could read it. Isn't that so cool? I wonder who is reading this, haha. Evie just made me lunch, and it was a sandwich with meat again. I don't eat this much meat because my mom likes for me to eat my veggies, but Evie says that Mom is not the boss anymore, so I can eat whatever I want. I had a lot of chips, and my tummy started to hurt, and I really wanted my mom. But Evie said that it was okay, and she could make it feel better. Evie told me to take a nap, and so I did. But I had another scary dream that I was cutting up Mom and Dad because Evie was making me. When I woke up, Evie said it was just a dream because Mom and Dad were still asleep upstairs. I want to go and see them, but Evie says I can't or else it will ruin the wish, and we will get in big trouble for making a mess and eating junk. I think I'm going to go play hide-and-seek with Evie now. Love, Ava 3, Story 4. Every year on my birthday, I receive a letter. A bit strained, I never blamed him for making a living, because as a single father, he had a lot on his mind, and I respected that. That night, On my 18th birthday, my father was hit by a drunk driver on his way home. Then I received a letter. It was wrapped in a beautiful silver envelope, only decorated with my name. I opened it, careful not to rip it apart, and started reading. Dear Richard, I'll start this letter by admitting to one undeniable truth. I'm not a good man, and I've been an even shittier father. I've made plenty of mistakes, left too many things unsaid. I could make up the excuse that I'm simply a product of my time and the people that raised me, but I'll cut through the bullshit and just apologize. Your mother died while giving birth. It's a hard fact to live with, and though I've seemed cold at times, I need you to know that I never blamed you for any of it. How could I? You came to this world as a beautiful little creature, never asking for life, yet appreciating every moment of it. That I'm proud of you, that I love you. I wish I could say this to your face, but I'm a coward. Taught myself that emotions are for the weak. So for now, I'll put this on paper. It'll be waiting among my other things, and my last will and testament, should anything ever happen to me. But that'll hopefully be many years from now, and by then you won't even need this letter to remind you. You're a better man than me, Rick. I hope you know that. I'm sorry I haven't been a better father, but I promise it'll change. I love you, Dad. My father had died the same day he wrote that letter. He probably instructed the secretary to send the letter to his lawyer in the morning. I don't really know how else he would have gotten a hold of it. I read the letter a couple of more times before folding it neatly back up. Then I just sat down on the floor and cried. I'd kept it together for so long. I dug up some old photo albums from my childhood, sifting through them, and realizing he always seemed happy, smiling wide in each photo as I turned the pages. Seeing those memories in a new light truly broke my heart. We'd left so much unsaid, but all the emotions were there, shone through the smiles on our faces and the moments we shared. That's what truly mattered, not the words that could have been said, but the time spent together, and that would have been it. My father had passed, and life moved on. I kept the small house for myself. It was already bought and paid for, and I kept on with my studies. Then, 1 year later, on my birthday, I received another letter. It was beautiful, silver envelope, just like the last one, encased in a pattern of vines and bizarre-looking symbols, just small enough to remain hidden at first glance. In the center it simply said my name, written crudely, but not without charm. Dear Richard, I'm not much of a poet, but I'm sure not even Edgar Allan Poe could have found the words to describe the beauty of this place. It's simply put and believable. You need to know that I never suffered. The car hit me at such a speed that it killed me instantly. No pain, nor any memory from the incident. My world just disappeared, and a moment later I woke up surrounded by the most beautiful light. Where here is, I'm not exactly sure. I suppose it's heaven, though I can't say exactly what I did to deserve such a gift. It's like a city stretching endlessly as far as I can possibly see, buildings, spires covered in silver that stretch up into the sky, hiding among the clouds above, perfectly constructed and each magnificent in their own way. There are no horizons here. The world only ends when it's too far away to comprehend. Just tiny figures dancing in the distance. But it's beautiful nonetheless, enveloped in colors I never knew existed. It's perfect. We don't feel hunger, thirst, nor tiredness, yet the food is bountiful and always tastes exquisite. I don't need it, but it's a joy to feast nonetheless, never feeling too full, never gaining nor losing weight. There are some things I can't tell you, the guards or angels, and not sure what to call them, but they're telling me I have to follow the rules. It's a lot to take in, and wish I could tell you more, but now I need to go in any case. I love you, Rick. I wish I had said that while I was still alive, but at the very least this is better than nothing. Love, Dad. I wasn't sure how to react. Sure, it was his handwriting, but it had to be some kind of joke. They'd been great as long as I'd known them, always there for me, and without them I couldn't have survived the passing of my father. So without any further solutions, I let it go. I put the letter alongside the rest of my father's belongings and forced myself to move on. I almost forgot, I truly did. Then the third letter arrived, yet again, on my birthday, exactly 1 year later. Dear Richard, I found her. After an impossibly long search, I finally found her, your mother, Helen, the love of my life. I knew she had to be here. She had always been one of the best people I knew. I guess I should explain. As I said in my last letter, time doesn't flow as you'd expect, at least not here. Despite that, we keep track of it just like we do back on Earth. I suppose it makes it easier to look out for our loved ones. It just feels longer. Your mother, she's not exactly herself. I found her on top of one of the spires. Rick, I've never seen her like this. She looks nothing like the woman I knew and loved before. Yet I know it's her. I can feel it in my heart. She's so skinny, emaciated, and on the brink of starvation. I didn't even realize that could happen. I myself haven't eaten in weeks. Yet I feel completely fine. She just keeps repeating the same sentences over and over. Didn't understand. I tried to be good. What did I do wrong? I tried to convince her to leave with me, but she doesn't even recognize who I am anymore, and I can't simply force her. Believe me, I tried. Up here, it's just impossible to do anything to anyone against their will. I realized that when I tried to write about what I saw on the first day, but found that I couldn't form the words. It's hard to describe, but we have free will here as long as we follow the rules. Anything else is literally impossible. The angels turned their attention to me after I hung around your mother for more than a few days. They told me to leave her alone. I tried to explain, but they wouldn't listen. I had to leave her, Rick. I couldn't stand to see her like that. But I'll keep checking up on her, I promise. Once I tried the few ideas I could think of. Some other people here for help, but most of them are like myself, new and clueless. The few veterans I found only tell me to let it be, that I'll get in trouble if I keep messing around. I've got to go now. They're looking at me. I love you, Rick. I hope we don't see each other too soon. Just live a good life. It's far too short. His handwriting seemed rushed towards the end. I must have read through the letter a dozen times, trying my best to figure out what was going on. Since I had no means of tracking the letter, I couldn't do much other than listen to my gut. As strange as it might sound, I believed every word I read. I decided I would respond, that I would write to my dad and see what happened. Honestly, I felt kind of stupid as I put the letter down at my doorstep, expecting it to magically vanish during the night. But even the smallest chance at contacting the afterlife was one worth taking. Of course, when I opened the door the following day, It was still there, mushy with smudged ink from a small storm that passed during the night. Defeated, I could do nothing but wait for another year to pass. As my birthday rolled round, I hatched a plan to catch whoever delivered the letters. I camped outside in my garden, waiting for the culprit. Hours passed. I waited from the early hours, and as midday arrived, I decided to call it quits and head back inside. There it lay on the other side of my front door, on top of my slippers, a perfect silver envelope with my name written on it. Dear Richard, I've found someone willing to answer my questions. They claim they've kept an eye on me for some time, but that I wasn't ready to see them, so they kept me waiting, hoping I'd one day come around. I'm not exactly sure what they meant by ready, but they say that until I see what this place truly is, I won't understand. They mentioned something they simply referred to as the Dome. They say it's in the center of the city, an almost impossible distance away. I know she's utterly broken, but as long as I'm able to, I'll protect her, I promise you that. Happy birthday, Rick. I'm happy I have the opportunity to stay in touch. Even if it's impossible for you to respond, I love you, Dad. That's how my life went on from then. Each year, on my birthday, my father sent me a silver letter. Just updates from the afterlife, and as bizarre as it all felt, I felt happy to have a connection with my dad, though it had been partially tainted by the image of my sickly mother standing atop of a spire. There it was, lying on the doorstep, except rather a perfectly smooth envelope with vines and symbols engraved onto the surface. I found a crumpled piece of paper, one covered in erratic handwriting, incomprehensible phrases and drawings. Richard. They kept going for days, weeks of climbing, and once I finally reached the top, I was alone. I've searched the entire section of the city, climbed each building to the top, asked whatever person willing to talk to me. I don't know what to do. I haven't eaten anything since we last spoke a year ago, nor have I had a drink. I don't sleep. I don't do anything other than search for her. I wanted to send you a letter earlier. I needed to tell you what happened, but I had to wait because of the rules, those damn rules. A few weeks ago I approached one of the guards. I don't know why I hadn't thought of it before, but if heaven was real, then God had to be somewhere up here. I asked the guard about it, and he laughed at me. He touched me on my shoulder and whispered a few incomprehensible words into my ear. It was like a veil was lifted off me. I could truly see this place for what it is. A concrete jungle with a sky so dark I don't know how I didn't notice it before. The people I came here with have long since gone. All of them are heading towards the Dome. In their place, I'm finding more and more people have been here for an eternity, hundreds, thousands of years, and they all seem the same. They are all diseased. Whatever features they once had, whoever they once were, it doesn't matter anymore. They've simply existed for far too long, an eternity of time to wash away what once made them human. I think it's time for me to wander through the Silver City. Maybe I just need to reach the Dome. Maybe I can find your mother there. Maybe I can finally get some answers. Whatever the cost, I can't go on like this. I'm not sure how long it will be until I send another letter. The road towards the Dome is different, but this is just something I have to do. I hope you understand. Dad, 5 years passed without another silver letter. The first year I was worried, the second I felt scared. but as the third and fourth rolled around, I felt relieved. It was as if a heavy burden had been lifted off my shoulders. I'd never been much a religious person before my father died. Yet I never feared death, but now, knowing that what awaited me on the other side was the perfect haven we'd all been taught about, I felt horrified. As guilty as it still makes me feel, I never wanted to receive another letter from my father. Then we arrive at today, my birthday. It's the 20th anniversary of my father's death. As a habit, the first thing I did in the morning was to check the front door. There, on the ground, lay a silver envelope. On the inside I found another letter. It was filled with meaningless phrases, jumbled words, and sentences I couldn't understand. A cruel joke played on us by whatever creature rules this place. I thought this was heaven, but it's not. Him in hell, we're all in hell, but it's not a punishment. It never was. It's just all there is. Death is the beginning of a nightmare that never ends, and there's no way out, no alternative. I'm going to enter the dome now. I don't know what I'll find on the other side, but I feel this will be the last letter I ever send you. Story 5. On my birthday, my family gathers in one room and stares at me for 24 hours. Today, I turned 30, and someone paid the price for that. Our family, the Lees, has always been seen as eccentric by the locals. Some of us have become inventors, artisans, masters of niche crafts, and the like. We've lived full, happy, and creatively stimulating lives, seen to the outside world as to not have a care in the world or need for anything. But we have this life at a great cost, a ritual that must be undertaken every August 30th, known collectively as Thanksgiving game. My family has had this tradition for over 250 years. Every member of the family above the age of 18 congregates at my family's estate and spends the 48 hours prior to the event catching up, partying, and generally enjoying themselves. They are, after all living on borrowed time. When the final hours tick down to the event, they detox, ensure they've slept well, done their business, and have plenty to hydrate, because once the clock strikes midnight, they must all stay in one room until the clock again strikes midnight. The entire time they must keep at least one other family member in eyeshot. No single member of the family must be unaccounted for. The parlor room is structured in such a way that we can see each other no matter where situated in the room. Each area is well lit, comfortable, and accommodating, which, when you deal with roughly 30 people, is a necessity. You have to understand, growing up in this environment had me thinking this was simply a normal tradition every family undertook. I saw no strangeness in spending my birthdays away from my family members, that it was just bad luck my birthday fell on the tradition day. That, of course, would change after I turned 11. I remember the first time I learned of the waiting game. My mother was supposed to host my birthday party, but apologized and said she wouldn't be home in time from work. To that point in my life, Mom had always worked long hours to provide for us, and it was routine. I was crestfallen, but I understood. She was an art curator and loved her job with an unbridled passion. She was my hero. The fact we shared a birthday only made our bond more special in my eyes. She was a best friend as well as my mom, and I don't know a lot of kids who can say that. I still remember the smell of lavender in her hair, the way her eyes flickered, and the way she hugged me tight before saying goodbye. Never forget how special you are, Theo. The fact you're here is nothing short of a miracle, and that is worth celebrating. I love you." She kissed me on the forehead and promised us pizza when she got home to make up for it. I remember the babysitter waving her off as I got the house ready for my friends so we could play Nintendo and stay up late. But something in the pit of my stomach was uneasy, like I'd missed the step up on the stairs. When Mom didn't come home the following day, that feeling blossomed, sprouted wings, and flew into my heart, where it started breaking away at the fragile casing until it would shatter spectacularly. There was no funeral. The police seemed disinterested in finding her, and my family said very little about it to me, just that she'd gone away, and that I'd understand when I was older. I was a day away from turning 18 when my great-uncle Thaddeus told me I had to come to the family estate for my birthday, that it was time. I remember being pissed because I had a date with my high school crush, but that was of little interest to him, and saying no was a wise idea, so I gave in. We drove in relative silence for the majority of the journey. He kept his steely-eyed gaze on the road and furrowed his brow. The man was in his 70s, that still commanded a room with his gait. I tried to block out the feelings of teenage frustration and focus on the country road. "We miss Christina, too, you know," he grumbled from behind a thick white mustache. "Your mum was a wonderful woman, beautiful soul, and a vision of the world like nothing I'd seen before. But with her and your Aunt Cecilia now gone, well, it's a good thing you're turning 18. He drummed his fingers against the wheel. I said nothing, and instead chose to let my feelings swirl round inside of me as we pulled up on the Lee estate, a secluded manor house in the countryside. It had sat here for nearly 3 centuries with upkeep repairs in various areas, but largely remained the same grandiose spectacle of architecture it had been when first constructed. All members of the Lee family were born here, myself included. It was a rite of passage and a way. As we headed inside, the remnants of the party from Friday night still scattered around. A very somber atmosphere greeted me in the parlor room. Spread out amongst bean-bag chairs, leather couches, armchairs, and ottomans were the entire adult Lee clan members. Among them were my great-aunt Agnes, Uncle George, Aunt Lisa, cousins Mick and Ralph, and sat in a large chair at the back was my grandpa, Sir Walter Quincy Carter Lee, a distinguished man with a usually jovial spirit, but now sat morose and deflated, as if carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders. His eyes never left mine as I awkwardly shuffled into the room. In fact, none of theirs did. 30 pairs of eyes fixated on me as I sat opposite Walter and gave him a half-hearted smile. "Theodore, I'm sure you're wondering why you're here, and since you're a man now, I will not sugarcoat it." Walter's voice broke the silence, and much like his facial expression, it was dripping in weariness. The Lee family has been blessed with fortune, fame, and success in all things. We have had this for a very, very long time, but it comes at a cost. We have a contract of sorts that must be fulfilled on August 30th, every year without fail. He slid across an old, dried-up piece of parchment with a slew of signatures and requirements. I scanned it and felt all the moisture leave my mouth. On this day in 1756, I, Theodore James Wellington Lee, patriarch of the Lee family, do hereby commit our earthly bodies and eternal souls to undertake this practice. until we are either no more or our obligation deemed fulfilled. Starting in the waning days of August, we shall congregate on these grounds and be merry, cavort and enjoy our lives as one is wont to do. But as the clock strikes midnight and hails on the 30th day of the month, we shall undertake the waiting ritual and obey these basic tenements as set out and agreed upon by both parties. 1. All members of the Lee family over the age of 18 must be present. 2. All members of the Lee family must keep at least one other member in sight at all times. 3. If there is a designated focus of the Lee family, they are to be stared at constantly. 4. Should any members of the Lee family hear voices that distract them, they are to ignore them. 5. Lights must be available at all times, including backup matches, should there be an issue. 6. Line of sight must not be broken until the clock once again chimes 12 times to usher in August 31 South. T. I do sign thy name in blood to signify the commitment to this pact and the promise that current and future generations of the Lee family shall continue this practice, lest we invoke the consequences of non-completion. Signed, Theodore James Wellington Lee. Witness, Elnora Micah Lee, spouse. In place of the alternate signature was a bizarre series of characters that I had never seen before. I'd half expected the devil himself to have put his name down, but this just made me feel uncomfortable. What the hell is this? An elaborate birthday prank? I tried to force a laugh, but my body wouldn't cooperate. Grandpa Walter shook his head. No, lad, it's a commitment to the agreement. Your mother was our original focus person, and now that you're of age, it's you. All you must do is sit in the chair and wait it out for 24 hours. We will be here with you. When the time is up, you can go. Your successes will come to you naturally, and life will be plentiful. He gestured to the room around him. All of us have had great lives, and our children, your cousins, will continue this trend, provided we do our part here and now. What choice did I have? I agreed, and Grandpa presented me with a different document that every member of the family had signed in blood on their 18th birthday. I did the same and was free to talk to everyone before the clock chimed midnight. Once it had, we all took our seats, and the ritual began. I won't lie. It was initially still feeling like a prank that I was waiting on for the rug to be pulled out from under me. But as the first hour passed and conversation grew sparse, I realized how seriously everyone was taking this. Imagine being sat in a chair at the back of a grand parlor, books strewn across you from side to side, the well-lit room full of your family members. Some you get on well with, others you avoid like the plague, and every single one of them is staring at you incessantly for 24 hours. About halfway through, still during the day, things would become less tense. Something about the daylight brought with it a comfort of visibility that could not be taken away, and conversations grew lively again. By the time we reached 10:30 p.m., however, tensions were high. Darkness had enveloped the room, and one of my aunts explained that this is when things can go wrong, but stopped herself from continuing any further, hands shaking. I would hear faint whispers from outside in the hall that I brushed off as the maid or a younger family member conversing, but could never totally remove from my mind. The lights would flicker, and everyone seemed to be on edge. But we made it to midnight, and on that final chime, the group erupted into cheers and congratulations to one another, myself included. It felt like we'd just come up for air for the first time in decades. Life tasted fresh, and all we wanted to do was experience it. A small and short party was had as thanks, but we were all admittedly so tired that it didn't get too far. I would bow out before 3 a.m. and sleep through the rest of the 31st, going about my life as normal as possible from that day on. Grandpa was right. My life found great success with each passing year. I would be accepted to the art school I had as my top pick. I became a recognized artist, and people all over the world knew of my work. A family of my own may have eluded me, but I was a happy 29-year-old for all things considered, even if my partner resented my birthday ritual. I hadn't explained it to her yet, and didn't have plans to do so for as long as possible. Outsiders never fully understood, and it wasn't permitted to have anyone not married involved. I liked Harriet a lot, but I was not ready to go down that route any time soon. She gave me a defeated goodbye as I left. This was the second birthday of mine she'd gotten to be a part of, and it was clearly bothering her that she couldn't indulge me in the way she wanted. I told her we'd have all the time afterwards, but this did little to assuage her frustrations. "You always keep secrets, Theo. I don't like it," she huffed, understandably frustrated at not being let in. "How can we progress with our relationship if you keep me at arm's length? You've not even told me about your mother, and it's been nearly 2 years. I wish I knew myself, but that's just how it is," I shrugged. This was something that hurt, but Heidi had many years to process. "And if we ever get married, you'll learn all about what goes on, okay?" The simple prospect of even mentioning marriage put a smile on her face, and she seemed to forget all about her frustrations. She kissed me and sent me off without a second thought. The Lee estate, by this point, was largely a mix of old and new members. Cousins Mitchell, Eric, Sadie, Tippa, and Kiefer had all long since turned 18 and were now successful 20. Some things my aunts and uncles from years prior still able to come along. Surprisingly, my grandpa was still the active patriarch. Even at 87, he had plenty of vigor and was relieved to see me pull up, ready to undertake the festivities and party. Now that I'd been doing this for 12 years, it had become a macabre routine that we loved and hated in equal measure. We ate, drank, talked about life and love. We existed and made sure to cherish those moments. Then, as the clock struck midnight, we took our places, and that familiar chill washed over all of us. I don't know what was different. Thinking about it now, something had to have been off. But when you're in a routine for so long, even an odd one like ours can begin to feel mundane. We locked all the doors, entered the parlor, took our seats, and so it began. The first 30 minutes was of no real issue, some idle chatter here and there, but largely everyone was steeling themselves for the long day ahead. Cousin Mick was using a stress ball, whilst Cousin Ralph had a single earphone in with an audiobook on his phone. Smart decision. At 12:35 a.m., there was a smash against the window. It sounded as if a bird had flown headfirst into the glass, intent on crushing itself. We jumped, but years of experience didn't have us all staring at the window. Instead, Pippa went over within our line of sight and opened the curtains. A cracked window, but no bird. In the distance, we could see something moving, but it wasn't possible to figure out without closer inspection, and that wasn't possible. The family estate is a private land that borders on a large wooded area. We don't govern that part of the land and instead have large fences around the property that shows where our ownership begins. So why would anyone be willingly out there? Shit's weird, right? I chuckled, looking at my grandpa and expecting a nervous laugh back. Instead, he shook in his chair and kept his gaze on me, sweat pouring down his nose and his skin growing sallow. It's just like last time with Christina. He breathed. We tried to cheat the system, and we're still paying for it. Cheat the system? What the hell was he talking about? I scanned the room, and the older members of the family looked increasingly agitated and anxious. My Aunt Gertrude bordering on hysterical as she whispered something to my Uncle Bill, pointing a shaking finger at me. He would calm her and would spend the next 2 hours in almost total silence. But when the lights began to flicker and the anxiety rose again, I felt myself needing to ask, "What's going on, Grandpa?" I breathed, the tension spreading through the group like a disease. He shifted uncomfortably, and my concern only grew. "If you don't tell me right now, he'll walk out of this building, and that'll be the end of the tradition." He immediately leapt out of his seat, eyes wide and wild. "No, absolutely not. We do not need any more suffering and death in this family." The room grew cold, and my blood along with it. Death, Mum, die. The sheer pain of those words leaving my body like the very air was being pulled from my lungs by force. He sank back into his chair, defeated. The contract never originally stipulated we all must gather together. The trick set out was to do it on a day that would keep at least one of us apart. We would have obstacles from life or employment that would ensure at least one of us would be unable to make it each year, thus fulfilling their end of the bargain. So we decided to make it a mandatory rite of passage. For the family, your mother's and your birthdays becoming the luckiest break we received. For so long, we were able to maintain peace and tranquility. His lip quivered, and the lights flickered again, but all debts must be repaid, especially with them. In a brief moment, for a fraction of a second, I saw something stand in the middle of our parlor. It towered over all of us, hunched over with its bulbous head against the ceiling, red eyes fixated on me. If there was a mouth, I couldn't see it. It held up a twisted digit to its face, as if to shush me before the lights flickered back on. If Grandpa or anyone else saw it, they didn't acknowledge it. I tried my best to hold my nerve and ask a question to keep my focus. "What are they?" I managed to muster, hoping there'd be some kind of explanation for what I saw. Maybe an old legend I could connect to them to make sense of all this. But Grandpa just looked at me, a single tear running down his face as the proud patriarch of our family showed true fear for the first time in my life. "I don't know. Nobody does. They appeared to our ancestor, your namesake, so long ago. He said at the time they were a specter from beneath the earth. His wife insisted they came from the stars. His son was adamant they were an old Celtic legend forgotten to time. But nobody has ever truly known. But we do know one thing, Theo." The entire family came together, held hands, and softly hummed as they stared at me, trying to fight Zephyr. When break eye contact, when we don't fulfill our part of the bargain, bad things happen. I heard more whispering outside, the sounds of walls being knocked upon, and something unseen and gargantuan thundering around the home. It was trying to get our attention. Is that what happened to Mom? Did someone in this room fail to fulfill their part of the bargain? I felt a hot rage and grief push their way out, compounded by that feeling of being upset on my birthday of all days. I looked around, and my eyes settled on Aunt Gertrude, the most nervous of the bunch. She was my last auntie and Christina's eldest sister. "What did you do, Auntie?" She pursed her lips, and I could see the veins in her temple throbbing, trying desperately to hold her composure. But the noses were unrelenting, and nobody in the room was attempting to calm her, as if they knew this needed to happen. "I always resented your mother, Theodore. She was pretty, confident, young, and full of energy. Always got the recognition from Father, the love she wanted, and the life she sought. I was never satisfied with what I had, and I thought if she was gone, maybe that good fortune would shine on me. So I took some sleeping pills and passed out." The staring felt malicious, angry, full of spite and a hint of regret. "I don't have any ill will towards you, Theodore, but if it meant I could live the life I have now, I'd do it again." Bitch Pippa and Sadie piped up from the sides. Both of them loved their Aunt Christina. "All of you knew? Huh, never told him. Were you even planning to?" Kiefer spat on the floor in disgust. "This family should fucking burn." I felt my head swell, a cocktail of emotions coupled with the unseen attempts to distract us. Grandpa took my shoulders in both hands and looked at me, the saddest smile I'd ever seen on a person's face. "I let the smartest and most talented of my girls go because of tradition. Rest assured I won't do it to you. We've seen enough death and enough loss in this family. Before your mother's birth, we would see 2 dozen of our family taken in as many years. She stabilized us. You continued that. But keeping this from you was the wrong decision, especially at your age." He let go, backing up to the parlor door. "So if you want to leave, to confront whatever takes us, to get your revenge on us, we won't stop you." The family murmured, but didn't protest. Gertrude sobbed silently. "How do I know it won't take me?" My legs shook as I stood up. It was barely 3 a.m. by this point. We had so long to go. "You don't, but that is part of you making the choice instead of us. Perhaps if you are the one to leave, it will punish us instead." I stood there for a few minutes, deciding over my choices, how to respond to a family steeped in secrecy that would willingly send my mother and I to slaughter in order to keep proliferating. It turned out I wouldn't need to wait very long for a decision. The front door hadn't been properly locked, and Harriet came in, blasting music and armed with a mobile strobe lighting machine. I'd told her that while we had a ritual, I'd focused instead on the partying aspect. She followed me here. The second she entered the house, bumping music and the lights shining through the room, they hit several of the family members in the face, breaking eye contact. And just like that, the pact was broken. I don't know if I can fully articulate what happened, but I felt a deep rumble beneath my feet. The air grew thick, and it felt as if time had slowed down. Something was stirring in as I looked around at the family. I could see on their faces they knew it was coming for them. I looked at Grandpa, still smiling and nodding as the lights went out. I made a direct beeline out of the room with Harriet in hand, slamming the parlor door behind me and pushing my body weight up against it. "What the fuck is going on, Theo?" she screamed, confused and distressed. But I was beyond that. I held her close and we kept our heads down, hoping to make it through whatever hell was behind just a few inches of wood. I saw nothing, but I heard everything. A cacophony of shrill voices screaming, laughing, singing and groaning in one torrent of suffering. Things were thrown around the room, possibly furniture, possibly a body. I sat against that fucking door until daybreak this morning, when Cousin Pippa gently knocked against the door and told us to come in, that it didn't matter this year anymore. Opening the door, I saw carnage. The room was singed black from wall to wall. Most of the family were laying face down or cowering in the corner, completely unresponsive. As I scanned the room, wordless, full of anxiety and trepidation, I already knew who would be missing. Grandpa. No trace of him existed, as if he had been wiped from existence. But, to my surprise, Gertrude had been taken, too. A smear of blood next to her husband that ran across the length of the wall and ended in the corner. Her husband simply rocked back and forth, holding her green shawl. My attention was then drawn to the center of the room, to something I took with me to the car. Something I have in front of me now that the full 24 hours have passed, and I have 364 days to decide on what to do next. The family went home, all of us fully understanding what had transpired. Harriet tried in vain to apologize to them, but each one treated her as if she was a ghost. After all, she wasn't part of the family. She wasn't part of the ritual, a part of the game. For all that I'd learned, I still didn't know what they were or where Mom and Grandpa had gone. I dropped Harriet home and made her swear to never talk about it. She was devastated, but understood. When she asked me what I intended to do, I simply shook my head. The contract had been amended, you see. Not that there's anything anyone here can do about it aside from listening to know these things happen. The waiting ritual had been extended to 48 hours. All must attend graver consequences for those who don't. A simple note written in obsidian ink had been pinned to the top, Gertrude's signature crossed out and Harriet's name written in her place.